Ladies and gentlemen, today is April 14th, 2015, and you guys are cracking me up in the chat already. This is the KNKL show as I nearly choke on my spit and die right at the beginning. This is the KNKL show number 222. We will not have another episode like this until 111 episodes from now, where we will reach 333. My name is Kienan and today we are going to be jumping back into Jinxie Winxie, my favorite champion in the League of Legends. Let's get back to painting her today. We will be jumping through a time lapse. For those of you who haven't checked out part 1 on YouTube, go check it out now. We will be jumping back into this, talking about refining line art. I'll show you guys a couple tricks for how I created these braids. Whoa! How do you do that, Keenan? I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you a really easy way to do it. And then we're going to be jumping into a little bit of backgrounds. Background valuing, creating shapes with painting rather than figuring out rather than drawing a background, we're going to paint one with values. But before we get into that, we need to take a stroll down the lovely lane. Down the lovely lane, because you guys are awesome. And you guys have been submitting your artwork as always. So thank you very much to everyone who has been submitting their artwork. Makes my day every single time. If you'd like to check out these pieces for yourself, go to the KNKL Facebook, or you can type in that tiny URL at the bottom and it will magically transport you to this very page where you can check out everybody's artwork. Like the page, submit your own artwork, and get featured on the show, and nonetheless come get some cookies. And, oh man, I still love that Battle Bunny ribbon. Super awesome. Super awesome. You guys are just too good. And last but not least, the KNKL Patreon. Thank you guys so much. You guys are so supportive. Thank you so much for coming on the Patreon, supporting the show. If you're watching on YouTube, you can click that link at the bottom right to get access to my PSDs, as well as a bunch of other cool rewards. Go check it out for yourself. See what works for you. All right, that's enough shameless plugging. Let's go ahead and get into the actual show. So what we're going to be doing is we're talking about Jinxie. And what we're going to be doing is getting into the time lapse first and foremost. So let's go ahead and get that started. All right, here we go. So in the last episode, we left off with the kind of rough line art. Oh, and if anybody is having trouble seeing this on Twitch, try reloading the page. That usually helps. There has been some issues with the streaming lately, but everything else on my end seems to be going quite well. So yeah, just reload the page. People in the chat, tell everybody just to reload it, and it should be good. All right. Moving on. So we were just going into our line sculpting, which is what I was talking about last week. You guys have seen me do this millions of times. But it does stand to say that we should re-explain and go over it over and over again, because this is my technique, and lately I've been looking at the techniques of other awesome people on DeviantArt and realizing that there's a lot of really cool ways to get to a final design, a final product. However, the strength that I feel that this has, as opposed to other people doing sort of like a sketchy line technique where they will use thin lines, is that towards the middle and the end of my process, I like to actually go back in, lock my pixels, right, with this magical button that we talk about over here, right? Wiggling my mouse, a magical way to teach people. I like to actually color my lines and get them ready for overpainting, which is something that I demonstrated in the Ari Splash and something I'll be doing a little bit of in this piece. I wanted to set up my lines mostly so that way they were clean, that way I could just kind of drop in some colors, do a little bit of flat, just simple flat colors with a little bit of gradation. More going for a feeling piece in this one as opposed to hyper real lighting. And we're going to talk a little bit about lighting, and but specifically we're going to be talking about the backgrounds today. And we're going to be making a couple notes for what we're going to be working on throughout the week, and that I will bring to you next Tuesday. And we're going to have a freaking awesome time. And but I will tell you immediately what my original idea for this was, is because her hair is sort of being blown to the side. Not only is that a compositional choice, but I imagine what's happening is that there's sort of like an explosion happening behind her. Like these very simple lines represent sort of like smoke and stuff that will be blowing past her, right? And that is why her giant pigtails are waving in the wind so majestically. So we're taking care of that, and yeah, we're just going to be painting in some smoke there. I imagine there's going to be like some fire and like little embers and stuff kind of like flying past the screen. And for the most part, the background is going to be out of focus. And this is a very awesome way to make a cool picture but not have to worry so much about details in the background. Because we could draw a completely destroyed post-apocalyptic Piltover, right? Or we could just choose the right amount, the right colors and just a blurry brush and make it look like an out of focus post-apocalyptic Piltover and let the viewer fill in the blanks, which is one of my favorite things to do in art, when you just let the viewer fill in things. It makes it more interesting that way. When you can let the viewer fill in blanks in certain areas, it does help. It does really help. Spell out the parts that you want to be spelled out, and then the other parts, let the viewer do the work. And then that means you can move on to your next piece even quicker, which is really handy because that's what I'm all about. It seems like halfway through each of my paintings, I get an idea for another one, or I want to do something else. And there's a bunch of projects that, of course, you guys know that I try to balance and try to get out at the same time. So it's nice being able to create content as well as have it be quick and effective. And that is why I teach you guys, basically going back, like follow me back in time, all the way back to talking about line sculpting. This is probably one of the best resources or techniques that I've found to save time in terms of getting your ideas out, focusing on one thing at a time, and then just getting stuff done. And I have been seeing you guys do it on the Facebook. It's really awesome seeing you guys employ the technique. The technique. Much discipline. I am very, very honored. Very honored. All right. Yeah, but this time lapse is going to go on for probably about 2 more minutes. A couple more things that I think are worth noting are we're probably going to be going into the pigtails in a little bit. I'll pause it and I'll explain it very quickly, and then we will do a real-time explanation of it because, you know, time lapses are good, but they're more so just for fun. Sometimes you can learn a couple things from it, but nothing beats real-time demonstrations. So, but a couple things that I did enjoy about this piece right now is coming from part 1, I was really happy with how the composition really just kind of held up in terms of just like feeling like I wanted it to. It just felt like the original thumbnail that I had made with like the shark face and then her face right behind it and both of them having the open mouth. It just felt really good, so I was happy about that. Other than that, I don't know. It's been a while since I've done like a profile picture of a girl. And usually I try to stray away from it because sometimes I feel like it's too easy or it's more interesting to show like a 3/4, you know. But in this case, like I said, I'm going for more of an artsy thing. And I'm starting the pigtails here. Check it out. So what you're going to see me do in quick time is that I am laying in, see, here's the layer 5 represents the pigtails lines. And then behind it, I'm basically dropping in values. And then I'm going to go ahead and erase out the values to make the braids, and I'll show you guys that real time as well. But you guys can see how I go about doing that. Create a pattern and then build off of that pattern. But like I was saying, usually I try to stay away from doing like profile pictures because I just feel like they're, I don't know, I don't want to say like easy or like cheating, but you know, in this case, I wanted to sort of make sort of like making a statement, right? Make a statement with the piece, but also have it be kind of creative, right? Instead of just a picture with like Jinx there, you know, like a normal pose, like it's like full body, and then she's just there with a white background shooting the minigun, right? I could have done that, but again, I needed to kind of spice it up a little bit. I needed to do something a little bit different, something a little more artsy, right? That's right. I said I needed to do something a little more artsy. I needed to become brooding, right? A brooding artist. What would a brooding artist do? So naturally I picked a composition that was a little more artsy. So I hope you guys are digging that. All right, and then you can see I added a little bit more detail and definition to the braids. And fear not, I will explain all. Everything will be explained. And I'm thinking time for explaining. A good time for explaining is right now. So let's go ahead and close that down. And let's talk about some tings. Talk about some tings first, and then we're going to start drawing in our values for our background. I'm going to show you guys how to create backgrounds in a very, very simple way. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's talk about braids. Let's talk about braids. Or should we talk about sketches leading up to it? I can very quickly run through these. And just so you know, all of these are available. This PSD that I'm working on right now with all these layers will be available on my Patreon. If you want to go check it out, just click that link in the bottom right. But let's move on. This here, then we went to that, and then we went to that. So it's 4 different layers, just showing kind of my cleanup process going from this to this. But let's talk about braids, yeah? Let's talk about braids. So here's the way that I like to do it. And I will go ahead and I'll just duplicate this layer, and I'll do this in real time. I did another tutorial on this, but I feel like good things bear repeating, because I don't expect you guys to watch all 300 episodes of the KNKL show. And sometimes it's good to just talk about things that have been improved on since I originally put them out. Okay, so this is what we're trying to get to, right? But this is where we start. This is where we start. So what you want to do is, I'm working with blue lines, right? And because I don't want to illustrate straight on top of the line art, which is here, right? I'm creating a layer behind it. Okay, so this is our value layer. Value layer. So go ahead and just like lay in. The first thing I would say is just go ahead and lay in your values, and then go ahead and erase stuff away from the edges. Now here's the secret pattern. In fact, let me just redo this. Here's the super secret pattern to make braids. Okay, let's go ahead and just fill this in really quick because we're awesome like that. All right, we'll just start with 1. Quick tip. Quick tips on braids. Okay, so here's what you want to do. You're going to take your brush, and I'm using like the chalk brush, but you can really theoretically do this with any brush. And what you're going to do is, from your center line, here's one thing you want to consider. Your center line of your piece, or of your hair. See? So like basically this is where all the hair will kind of go out from. And this is normally how people would try to draw braids. They might do something like this, and they're like, oh, that doesn't really look like braids. It doesn't look like it's interweaving with itself. But here's how you fix that. Consider your middle line, right? Keep it in your head. Keep it up here, right? And then what I'm going to have you do is take your eraser and start drawing lines outward from that center line, right? Moving upwards like this. See how they go right to the center, but they don't go over? So go ahead and do that. Leave a little space between them, like that. And then the hair is going to start turning too. So we're going to start seeing more of this. Basically, it's taking over the entire shape of the hair. Okay? Now, number 2 is what you're going to do is, see how there's this little triangle that forms underneath all of the hair pieces? What you're going to do is you're going to fill in that triangle. My teeth are shining too brightly, some people are saying. Okay, so anyway, that triangle right there, that is where you're going to erase the second part. And you are creating, now your braids are being created. Oh, amazing, no? And then you can go in back with your brush, and now you can start to highlight and kind of bring out those braids. Cool, huh? Very, very cool. And keep in mind that the braids, the way that the hair curves, your light is actually going to, like your shadows will appear here, like on the insides of each of these triangles. And then you'll kind of have like this highlight that goes through it. So, oh, whoops, that wasn't the best way of describing it. You'll have this highlight that goes sort of like through the center. So it'll be like this. The highlight of each braid will look like that. Okay? Same thing on this end. As the hair curves away, it'll look like that. And then the highlights of these sides of the hairs, or this side, will look like that. If you're dealing with like a forward projecting light. Okay? So there's step 1. We now have interlocking, interweaving hair. So the next thing that I like to do is I will just hit Control E, because remember, our lines are separate from our braids. Now we're going to combine them, okay? And now what we're going to do is we're going to start adding volume. Volume. We're going to add some Pantene Pro V to this hair, and we're going to make sure that we are doing something like this. Basically, I like to think of it as adding triangles, right? You're just adding triangles to each of these pieces of hair that stick out. Okay, so it's going to look like this. Then as the hair curves away from us, right, it's going this way, curving away, those triangles are going to start to become more subtle until eventually they disappear. Whoa. Oh my gosh, that is just crazy. Okay, now you go ahead and fill that in. Go ahead and fill that in. Go ahead and sculpt them to your liking. Sometimes I like to just kind of erase a little bit of that. You'll have some of that line. Got to kind of erase that. I'm just a really messy worker. Like my lines are super, super messy. But they have a lot of character and texture. Or, excuse me, texture when I'm done with them. So you can see we're done on that side. Same thing on this side. Add those triangles. Triangle, 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 triangle. More subtle, more subtle, more subtle. Boom, easy. Done, squeezy. All right, and now let's go ahead and erase a little bit of that, get rid of that line in there, and there you go. There's your messy braids, and yeah, that's basically all it goes down to. And then as you get to this point where it turns more away from you, basically all you're seeing is the sides. You're seeing just the sides of the braids. You're no longer seeing both of the interweaving pieces. So, I mean, you might see like a tad bit like that, and then like that. But see how now that gives you the impression that the braids are turning away from you? And that is a cool, very, very cool illusion to portray, because it's a lot more interesting than just having a perfect repeating braid going up all the way to the back of the head. All right, so that's my tutorial on creating braids and interweaving patterns. But let's go ahead and get into the next part. But before we get into that, I wonder if I should take questions. I'll save questions. Because this is probably going to take a little bit. Okay, so we have our completed lines, and I actually kept the face and the hair on separate layers for reasons unknown. I think it's more so just because I'm planning on coloring the hair separately from, like, I want to color the hairlines separately from the face. So just as an example, I can lock the pixels right here, and then say I want to color the hair lines like light blue, right? See, now I can color the hair without worrying about interfering with the face. This is a common thing that I do when I have overlapping, like overlapping major things, right? Another way that I possibly could have done this, and probably should have done this, is with Fishbones up here. I probably should have made him separate, so that way I could color his lines separate from Jinxie Winxie there. But if I really had to, I could easily just lasso, kind of clean it up, and then make that a separate layer. But anyway, that's the way I like to do it. That's why those layers are separate. We have a simple character mask, and now we have a background to make and a thumbnail early on. Remember these little shapes here? I do want to kind of keep those as a reference for what we're going to be doing. And now we're going to start moving the lines of the hair. And now we're going to start moving the thumbnail over to the side. Let's go ahead and shrink it down a tad bit. Now I'm going to show you guys how to start composing backgrounds with nothing more than magical values. All right, so rule number one is you got to have your background color, okay? And for purposes of this, I made it like a dark gray. I add a little bit of blue in there just because it's a little nicer to look at as opposed to just straight gray, right? A little more interesting to look at. Now what we're going to start doing is we're going to be painting in lights, painting in our lights. And this is on a layer above it, Okay, and I'm going to be using the chalk brush for the brush as well as the eraser. So let's go ahead and get into it, shall we? Okay, so the first thing that I really liked about this was this shape in here, and I kind of want to try to replicate that. So let's go ahead and just kind of say that this shape in here is like smoke, right? So we're having a very, very harsh backlight. Very, very harsh backlight, like an explosion happening behind her. So I would imagine that the light source is actually probably going to be very heavily happening right in this area, right? So we're going to have something like this. We're going to have some bright lights happening behind Jinx, like this. And as you can see, we are now creating a background with nothing more than just painting, right? We're just painting and we are able to start pulling out shapes. We're able to start pulling out shapes and coming up with ideas for what our final piece is going to look like. In fact, I might just switch over to the soft brush to start, just because this works better when you're working with something big, working on a big canvas. I think we're at like 12 by 18, or no, this is 16 by 9 at 300 DPI. For those of you who are curious about what canvas I like to work with, yes, it is 16 by 9, 300 DPI. And the reason why I do that is because I like to set it up. 16 by 9 is, of course, the ratio of a lot of current monitors, right? Widescreen monitors. So it always makes a handy desktop. People like it. And people will thank you for it. All right, so I like a little bit of light happening here. Yeah, I imagine there's just like a bright light coming from behind her. But then what I want to do is, originally I painted this bright back here. I painted this brighter, but I actually think I want to make it darker now. I want to make this slightly darker to help kind of push the feeling that, like, in order to make something look bright, you just make the things around it darker. And voila. This was a concept that I didn't really get until Michael Marino showed me, aka Iron Stylist, when I was working on the Xerath Splash. The old one, not the new one. The old one. I was like, how do I make him look glowy, Marino? How do I make him look? And he's like, well, I'll tell you what, Kienan. I'll tell you how to do it. All you got to do to make something look bright is just make sure that everything around it looks darker. And the reason why this works is because of exposure. I've taught you guys about this in the past. And that basically has to do with the fact that as you intake more light into your eye, your pupil shrinks, right? So basically, you're technically letting less light in. So darkened shadows, basically shadows that you would see normally, now become even darker, right? Because your pupil is shrinking and it's letting in less light from where those shadows were. So basically, it just ups the contrast. Ups the contrast. Lights now appear, things that have light on them will appear normal, and things that are in shadow will appear very, very dark. That's how you make stuff look awesome. And yeah, like stuff like that. So the first thing that I want to do is, yeah, like I said, I'm going to go ahead and just make this background quite dark because I want this smoke to be very, very bright. Might even be a little too bright. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. Because I want it to be dark enough. I want it to be just dark enough because we are going to have embers flying through the air too. And we don't want to forget about that. Don't want to forget about that stuff. In fact, and there's also going to be like some wreckage here. Like, let's just get a little bit, let's get a little more crazy, right? Let's get a little more crazy. So maybe have like a shape like this. Maybe this will be like some rubble or something. You know, right now we're just playing around with overall compositions. Okay, we're not worrying too much about what it is, but we are trying to find a composition that works. And I am keeping in mind a nice thing to do with this is to shrink it down, right? And to just look at the way that the shapes are forming, right? You might say, okay, well, I know Jinx is going to be really dark, right, with her colors. So maybe having a darkness behind her. See how now, even though it's just a character mask, it's a lot less clear. Whereas before, with that bright color behind her, we can now very clearly distinguish her silhouette. That's another thing that's really important. So things that I know I do want in this piece are a bright shadow, or not a bright shadow, a bright contrast between light and shadow, and then a couple embers kind of flowing through the air. So let's go ahead and put a couple of those embers in too. So we're going to have something like this. Yeah, embers kind of flying through. Maybe I should make this gray. Break my own rules. Yeah, I feel like gray actually. The blue is making it feel kind of, it feels like it's like oceany or like cool. It's cooling off the picture more than I want it to. So I'm not going full gray, but I will add some more gray in there. All right. So we got some smoky bits flowing through the air there. I'm actually going to darken this smoke too. Darken this smoke a lot. because I want the brightest parts of my piece to be in the embers here. All right, so the embers are kind of flowing through there. I have stuff like this, lots of little ones kind of flying through. Yeah, there we go. Have a nice hot rim light happening there. I'm going to open up questions in just a moment, guys, and then we will take those and call it a day. Call it a good day. Good day. Yeah, so there we go. Now we're getting somewhere. Now we're getting somewhere. Just had to take it a little bit more, be a little bit more experimental with it. You know what I mean? So further back, I actually wanted to have some buildings. I did want to have some Piltover buildings, but I wanted to be very out of focus and, you know, nothing too crazy. So something probably kind of like this. Whoops. Something kind of like this. And let's go ahead and pull up our Jinxie Winxie reference here, because I really like the shape language that's happening back here, like of these buildings. So I'm going to be referencing a little bit of that as we go forward, because these are not regular skyscrapers. These are not modern skyscrapers. These have interesting shapes. So let's make sure we capture that. Okay, very good. There we go. Something a little more like that. And I'll probably have like glowing stuff back here too, because this stuff will be blown up and kind of on fire itself. So it'll be kind of more like that. Again, not concerning ourselves too heavily with details yet. We're just getting ideas. Ideas for flow. Ideas for flow and stuff. You know, crap like that. You know. All right. I like it. All right, so that's looking pretty good right now. I'm going to go ahead and open up the question catapults. All right, ladies and gentlemen, please cast your questions over the castle walls. And King KNKL will answer anything you wish. And in the meantime, we're just going to continue working with this, working with our background. I think, you know, another thing that we could do is add in some more darks. Let's push it even more dark, because we have some things that could possibly be in the foreground. More wreckage. Maybe even a hiding Ziggs back here. Kind of do want to have a Ziggs head back here. Just for scale, right? Yes, maybe Ziggs will be like back here. Again, merely ideas. But yes, any questions that you guys have, I'll feel free to ask them in the chat to the right. If I can get my words out today, that would be awesome. That would be awesome. And then we'll end. All right, so questions coming in. Oh, Leritos. Good morning, Keenan. Senpai. First of all, I really like to thank you for the motivational talks. You're welcome. They keep you alive. Oh, wow. Dang. Very good. Very good. Do you mind to share how you develop your stylized character? Emma, it is always hard for me to drift away from the realistic painting when I want to paint stylized stuff. Okay, this is a great question. So a common question that I get is like, how do I develop style, right? So like things for the comic and simplifying things. I've found that what works really well is to, like, you got to learn the tough stuff. Like, you got to learn anatomy. You got to learn the ins and outs of muscles and flow and weight and all that stuff. You got to learn all the complexities first before you can truly begin to minimalize it, right? Because I believe that in all good stylized art, it still exhibits all of the complexities, but now it's been simplified, right? It's almost like it's simplified, and it communicates it almost like subliminally. It's hard to explain, but that's what I really believe that good art is mastering the complexities, then dialing it down. So I'm hoping that with these tutorials, I can show you guys some of the things that I have, sort of toned down or made easier to digest, but I still recommend that you guys take a look at the actual technicalities of why that stuff happens, such as, like lighting and subsurface scattering and ambient crap, and, it's like all that stuff. All right, moving on. But yeah, stylized stuff, it really will just come from experience and from study. That's what I'm getting at. Study the complexities, simplify it to your own needs, right? All right. Any advice? Shadowcat is asking, any advice or exercises for people with unsteady hands? Every time I draw or continue an existing drawing, my hands take a while to warm up before I can actually continue drawing without spending most of my time erasing. This is interesting, because another reason why I like to work in this style is because my hand, I don't rely on my hand to be steady on a tablet. That's just plain and simple. The reason why my beginning line art looks like this is because I'm not concerned with, could you imagine how hard it would be for me to draw these lines like this, straight off? It's okay, let's go in and let's draw fish bones. Yeah. Okay. So I got to make sure that this line is perfect. Okay. So it's here's his head, and then it goes down like that. Oh no, I messed up. Oh well, whatever. Okay. So there's his eye, and then he's got these teeth. It doesn't happen like that. The way that I work is I allow my hand to be loosey-goosey, right? And I'll be okay, so here's a shape here. There's a eye there, and then the teeth will be like that. And then what I'll notice is that natural flow will start to happen. It's okay, well, maybe the tooth should look more like that. And then I'll go back in and erase that out. And then you can see shapes begin to form off of that. So this is what I would recommend to you for saying that you feel like you have unsteady hands. That's just the nature of drawing with a tablet. It's hard to have the precision that you do when you're working with physical media, say in your sketchbook, right? So instead, use the fact that you can erase things completely, which is the advantage that the tablet has, to your advantage. Use that straight to your advantage, and feel free to draw in and erase whatever you feel like you want to erase. And then you can see how now the drawing is starting to take shape. All right, couple more questions. Then we're going to end today's show. XBTex is asking, I know that's not your name. I know it's BTE, but I like to say XBTex. XBTex is asking, what's the best way to work on anatomy? Reference and studies, or is there an easier way to figure things out? I have taught you guys a couple times about anatomy, but again, this goes back to that same principle of you must learn the complexities before you can begin to truly be outrageous and simplify them to your needs. But the best ways that I've found to learn about anatomy are to study people that have already done it really well. Study comic books, pick up books on simplifying anatomy. Even going to live models, nude art models are actually really great for doing this stuff. And I've only done it a handful of times. I've probably gone to a live nude art model drawing session probably about 5 or 6 times. But it's amazing the things that you learn in there. And it's really great. So if you're in college or high school or wherever you can go to do those things, I would highly recommend drawing nude models. Go do it. It's really actually very awesome, very entertaining, and it's pretty dang awesome and cool. So it'll help you out. All right, last question, and then you can simplify from there. Last question coming in from Elaine is asking, do I use Lazy Nezumi? That's actually something that my girlfriend recommended to me. I haven't tried it. I have not tried Lazy Nezumi, but I have had it recommended to me, and I would have you guys check it out. Lazy Nezumi is basically a line. It's sort of like if you work in Flash, it will automatically smooth out your lines. At least that's the way I've learned to interpret it as. But last question coming in. Let's see. Oh, yeah, but the way that I practice anatomy was actually drawing anime a lot. Someone else is saying that. Excuse me. Over here dying. Ozj is asking, what do you think about working on one layer only? I feel a lot more painterly, and it feels a lot more painterly and fun, but does it work in the professional world? Ozj, I will tell you that if you do not want to work on multiple layers, that's fine, but you have to be ready to go back and make alterations if you're going to be working professionally. And that is where having layers really comes in handy. Again, really, it doesn't matter what you do to get to the final result. Like, the boss isn't going to care, your team isn't going to care. As long as it's in the done pile on the date that it said it's supposed to be done, then nobody really cares. So I would say find something that works well for you, but just be ready for the consequences and repercussions that will follow. And at least I always like to learn to be, you want to be versatile. Be versatile. So have a couple things that you can do. Understand how it does work to work with layers, but also, do your thing on one layer. And this is actually something that I did too, because my style of painting splashes was slightly different than other people's techniques. So it was something, basically I had to say the same thing. It's like, okay, well, I'm interested to do this, but I know that this may come at a price later, right? So just know the ins and outs, because every technique has pros and cons. All righty, ladies and gentlemen. With that, we're going to go ahead and end today's show. So thank you guys once again for joining me live on Twitch. As usual, you guys have been awesome. People on YouTube, if you want to pick up this Jinx PSD, go ahead and just click that little link down there. Once this is on YouTube, the link is also in the description. Put a link on Twitch for you guys to go check it out as well. Thank you guys once again for joining me. As usual, I already said that. People on YouTube, thumbs up if you like it, thumbs down if you don't. My name is Kienan Lafferty. I'll see you guys on Thursday, where we will be having our thoughtful. Man, I am just like... It's one of those days, It's one of those days. Dude, you would not believe the weather outside today. I think it's just the weather is blowing me off, right? It was super, super windy today. Like, it was like perfect sunshine and clouds, perfect time to just go walk outside, take a little walk, take a stroll down to the grocery store. Like, the sun was out, everything was happy, butterflies, fluttering around. And then today, it's like 60-mile-an-hour winds, like people driving down the freeway, like trucks are getting blown over and people are like freaking dying. Like, I actually heard that there may have been a fatality. That's probably not good to joke about. But, yes, needless to say, today took a complete 180, and there were crazy winds, and it was, like, raining, and it was, like, snowing, like, just a few minutes ago. So, it's been a crazy day. But I'm glad that you guys are here. So, you guys take care of yourselves. Until next time, you guys stay cool. I'll see you then.